Right, let's do this. Here we go. Camera on. Down a little. Here we go. Hey everybody, welcome to the podcast. Hope you're well. Yeah, all good here. All good. So yeah, so we're change the live stream tonight to 8 o'clock. Hopefully get a few more people. We'll try it for a little while. If not, I'll go back to 7. 7 suits me more. But it's not. This is not about me. This is about you, right? So, what's the crack? What's happening, people? GH agus fáilte, eh? So, what have I been doing? Well, I had a gig at the weekend again. Played in the Sunflower Bar. Actually, I had a great weekend. Went to Mickey Bartlett, my friend. Played in the Woodville, just around the corner, which I shall be going round to after this podcast, going for a pint. With my beautiful Janie and my beautiful youngest daughter, Lily, because she's old enough now, so I can go for beers. And that's kind of cool, I like that. So yeah, Mickey played in the Woodville Friday and Saturday night, and it was great. And yeah, so we went on Saturday, and he was brilliant. He played with William Thompson, another comedian who opened for him. And then on the Sunday, I played a gig in the Sunflower Bar with the Doon Brothers. I Am Muir. Chris Kelly was there. He got up and sung a song. Junior Johnson was there. He got up and sung a song. So it was great. It was brilliant. Really, really enjoyed it. I love them solo gigs as well. Love the band gigs, obviously, and I got talking with Mickey about a wee idea that we can do together. Me and Mick's going to try and do maybe a sort of a show, a bit something different for the both of us. It's not going to be just me doing straight songs and him doing straight stand-up. We've got an idea. We think it might work. We think it'll be good. So, listen, join us over. Oh, here we go. There we go. There's a few people in on the. Brilliant. Okay. So Lee, Reverend Duffer, SME 30. I don't know who that is. That's a code name for someone, and I know you, but I don't know who it is. And okay, so they're on the live chat. That's awesome. That's great. Thanks, guys, for joining me. If you want to contribute, as I talk, please do. I have the thing up in front of me, so I'll read your messages as I get them, as you type them. And yeah, it's great. We're gonna. So everybody else, 8 o'clock Wednesday night. Looks like this. We got off to a good start here. 8 o'clock Wednesday night, live on YouTube, and then this goes out as a podcast tomorrow. So we're going to talk about a couple of different things. We're going to talk about the rise of English nationalism and what it means for us in Ireland, and how it has been allowed to happen. It didn't happen overnight. I mean, it's been around forever. I mean, every country is a nationalist side. It's not like the Irish nationalist side. Like the Irish nationalism is very left-wing, usually, and English nationalism tends to be right-wing, isn't it? Leon Snotsky on Twitter. Got you now, brother. Okay. Got you. Okay. Thank you. it means it's good. I like that. I got you now. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about. So the two things we're going to talk about is that, and then we're going to talk about a guy called Patsy Dan Rogers, who's officially sort of known as the last king of Ireland. And I don't know if you know about it, but Tory Island used to have a which is, we're talking about Tory Island here off the west coast there, and they had a king up until recently. He only died recently. I think they still have the king. The king is an elected position rather than a hereditary one. But we'll get to that. We're going to get to that. So, let's get to it. The rise of English nationalism. What is it? Listen, I'm not an expert on these things. I'm just like you guys, I'm just a observer. And over the course of my life, I've seen things, the ebb and the flow. Back in the 70s, when I was very young, obviously I don't remember, but my mate Pete remembers this stuff. He would have been just a teenager at the time, so he'd have been a member of he would have been a punk in Belfast. So there was a big right-wing thing going on in England at the time, especially. You had the National Front and all that. So you skip forward, they're sort of defeated. You have various characters and various groups. This is, if you want to watch a movie about it, watch This Is England, which is a fantastic film. Goes into a lot of it, how it happens. Also happens to have a great soundtrack. But anyway, I'm not talking about the past, the very far, the distant past. I'm talking about the recent past. But the reason that I bring the distant past up is because this is an ongoing project by the right wing. And we need to be very careful. We need to be very mindful of it. And it's happened in England, and it culminated in Brexit. And that's the political and economic, let me say that, right wing, those elements, it culminated in Brexit. That's what they wanted all along. For 40 years, 50 years, the newspapers in England blaming immigrants for everything, right? And whenever I see China being blamed for things, or we're talking about that the Paradise Papers last week, and Vladimir Putin was named in those and shown in the Guardian had a banner header, and it was an illustration with all the people with significant people that were named in those papers, and then it was Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin wasn't named, and I'm not defending Vladimir Putin. I don't know very little about the man, but he wasn't named in those. But to put him in the thing as though he was, because a lot of people will see the picture, read the headline, move on. So whenever I see that stuff, I always question it. At the minute, one of the things that's been going on recently, and again, I'm not making I don't know, but I read enough about this particular subject to question the narrative that we're hearing. And it's about the Uyghur Muslims in China. I've heard so much about this past couple of years. I haven't seen a damn thing. I haven't seen any evidence presented. Just hearsays and, stuff that's obviously coming from the secret services of the world. And I'm not saying that what is being claimed isn't going on, but I would say, why all of a sudden are we interested in those particular types of Muslims whenever these same, our Muslim brothers and sisters are being slaughtered in the Middle East? But those Chinese ones, all of a sudden we're supposed to care about those. So it's suspicious on that. But this is my point. Whenever you hear these things being questioned, whenever you hear them are being put out, you must ask who and why. And in this case, what we're talking about here is, I'm just going to get my article up here to read. There we go. Is the blaming of immigrants for everything. And that's what's been going on for 50 years. And it's happened throughout history. The Nazis did this. They blamed the Jewish people for things and for everything. But what they deflect from is what that is to do is to deflect from the mismanagement of the country in the first instance, right? So we can blame the immigrants, and we can blame Vladimir Putin, and we can blame China because they're picking on the Uyghurs. who we'd never heard of until a couple of years ago, right? Vladimir Putin's not closing down my hospital. Some dude coming across the English Channel in a boat or over here in a bus is not the cause of any issues they may have. Not one of them. And as the man says, if he's here to steal your job, the joke it's the Doug Stanhope joke, and he says it's something I'm gonna butcher it, but he says if some guy walking 5,000 miles and can't speak English as a first language, he's got no shoes and no money, and if he's going to steal your job, you're really badly fucked up your education. You know, that's the point. So these people are not our problem, but they're presented to us as if they are, and the reason that they're presented us as if they are is because they're an easy scapegoat for the managerial elite class. And I use that word elite, as you know. It's a derogatory term as far as I'm concerned. They're fucking up the economy of the countries. We're talking this in this instance. We're talking about the United Kingdom, and the fucking up of the public services of the economy. But then you have to go roll it back. You go, well, what do you mean they fucked up the public services? They fucked up. Who did they fuck it up for? They fucked it up for you and me. They didn't fuck it up for them. They're getting rich, and because they're psychos that don't care, they haven't fucked anything up. They've what they've done right. Do you get what I'm trying to say by that? Does that sort of make a bit of sense? You must always, I find that we must always question whenever we say something didn't work, or they're fucking up the NHS. You go, are they? Who are they fucking it up for? They don't seem to be fucking it up for them. They're not relying on the NHS. We are. They're not. Because they're very, very well remunerated. So that they don't need to rely on the NHS. Whereas you and me, on the other hand, don't. So, here's the thing. Now, if you look in the video, the people that are going to be listening to this, there's a little picture on the screen, and it's of a lady called, just get her name here, Nana Akua. And she is a presenter for GB News. GB News was recently been set up, and it was called Britain's answer to sort of Fox News in America. Now, we know what Fox News in America has done. It has took the narrative over a course of a couple of decades. Again, if you want to watch an interesting, a funny movie about that, and it is funny, but it does give you an idea. Anchorman 2 with Will Ferrell. It's a piss take of a movie, right? So don't. I'm not sending you to that movie to get your information about it. About the damage that Fox News has done, but it gives you, it makes some jokes about it, and it gives you, in the jokes, best jokes always give you a little bit of insight into our subject, and in this case, that subject. But this is my point. They managed to change the narrative over the course of decades, right? Because these things don't happen overnight. Britain didn't leave Europe overnight. The UK didn't leave Europe overnight. The narrative was built and developed through the media, through the printed media, and then the news, on the television media, and then the online media with the rise of the internet over decades. And it was the ruling class consistently blaming other people for their failures. So before it was the EU, you could have blamed immigrants, but then when you're in the EU, then you can blame the EU, and a certain amount of people will believe that, and enough people will believe it to make the change happen. GB News was set up to give they were openly politically biased towards the right. It got off to a bad start. Its anchor its anchor of Andrew Neil left in a bit of a huff because the production values weren't what he was used to at the BBC by all accounts. And they were trying to take the channel in a more right-wing direction than he, and he is a right-wing person that even he was more comfortable with. So I'm going to play you this video. Now, I don't know if you've seen this. It's a little short thing, right? And this woman, Nana Akua, is on the Jeremy Vine show, which is a sort of a daytime talk thing on Channel 5. Now, I don't know if you've seen this. They're talking about immigrants, right? Now, I'll comment after it, but we'll get to the point. It's about 2 minutes into the video, but you can get the thing. So I'll just play it for you and I'll stop.
So if people have come across from the Channel, from France, which is safe, why they would want to take a dangerous border crossing and then have to be rescued. So basically what often happens is they throw themselves overboard if, so therefore they then have to do a rescue mission, which is part of maritime law. I personally think that, I mean, look, as long as you know that if you come across, you will not be rescued if the boat sinks, I think that's fair enough, and that's why they're saying if they come across with jet skis, then they can't rescue them. It will actually hopefully stop the people trafficking, because if you are supporting that they should be rescued, then you're actually supporting people trafficking, which means that more people will come across because they will then think that they'll be okay.
What she's saying now? Immigrants that fall into the Channel, she's saying they shouldn't be rescued as a deterrent to stop them from coming. That's what she just said. To bear in mind, some of these people have come across the Mediterranean Sea, and we've all seen the ship. Apparently, the Med is an absolute graveyard. So they weren't deterred from coming across that. So onwards, we'll carry on with this, as difficult as it is to listen to.
What do you think, Gemma?
I think it's one of the most disgusting things I've ever heard in my life, and I was truly shocked and embarrassed.
Why?
For many reasons. Firstly, this is a clear breach of international law. And just because our Home Secretary decides to try and change domestic law, you are still breaking the law on an international level, which globally is shocking, embarrassing, and puts us in an absolutely terrible light.
You're more concerned about shock and embarrassment.
No, I'm talking.
The first thing you said was that actually because we're risking people's lives. But the first thing you said is because
you know why?
Because we're breaking international law.
I didn't go with that first of all because you clearly have no compassion or understanding of why these people are coming over in the first place.
You are simply supporting
Nana, let me make my point.
Let Gemma make a point. Yeah.
So I did start with that because I thought you might understand that or relate to that a little bit more.
By the way,
but yes,
just on a thing, she did something. I don't know if you noticed this, but when you're talking with these people, which I do quite a bit online. I try not to get into arguments. I don't mind having a discussion or a debate, but what they do is they hit you with a point that you never made, and then you go off on one. You go off defending and you never get to make your point. You never get to get your zingers out there, such as it is. Don't let them do it. Be mindful of it. If they start to, I'll knock it back a little bit. So you hear what you can hear exactly when she does it. So watch this.
It is shocking, embarrassing, and puts us in an absolutely terrible light.
You're more concerned about shock and embarrassment.
No, I'm talking.
She never said that.
Actually, because we're risking people's lives. But the first thing you said is because
you know why? Because
we're breaking international law.
I didn't go with that first of all because you clearly have no compassion or understanding of why these people are coming over in the first place.
You are simply supporting
Nana, let me make my point.
Let Gemma make a point. Yeah.
So I did start with that because I thought you might understand that or relate to that a little bit more. But yes, of course, this is state-sponsored manslaughter. And, you know, to decide and dehumanise these human beings who are coming over. And you're right, why do they do it? Because they're desperate. They've come from war-torn countries. They are fleeing places like Syria.
No, France.
But you can't decide. So if you're watching some people...
You said that they've come from war-torn countries. They've come from France.
Some of them have come from France, but they've been in Calais for years, and then they make a decision to try and get here because they're not being processed. It doesn't matter. You don't get to decide...
We'll still have a situation where our paid officials will be on a boat and they'll look at a father jump off a dinghy with a child.
Well, why would he jump off the dinghy? He shouldn't do that.
Well, he wants to be rescued, so he gets into the country.
If they're on a jet ski, they can't rescue.
Or maybe they fall out, or maybe the boat sinks, and you are talking about. Yeah, and also you've decided, as another human being,
I'm a human being.
You're dehumanising these people.
No, I'm saying
they have parents, they have children, and you know what? There's a film that's going to come out next year that a friend of mine has worked on. It's going to be a huge feature film about a girl who was an Olympic swimmer in Syria, who was one of these people whose parents gave her every bit of money.
So, that's what you're dealing with, that vile monster. But my point of bringing this up, and there is a point, is within a few years, if this continues, if these people are continually allowed to go on to mainstream media and say things like that, it's not that you don't. It's right saying, well, I'm not in favour of censorship. Just don't invite them. They can say it on their own thing, but you don't need to bring them into, I would call it polite society, if you want to think of it like that. But they will, and they will bring them back because it's good for fucking ratings. I'm talking about it right now. I know I'm nothing, but there's been lots of people talking about this. This woman is obviously a fucking monster. Literally a monster. And one of the things that it always upsets me when I see a black person do this. Like, one of the reasons that someone like Priti Patel stands out so much to me is because she is an Asian, obviously of Asian descent, and it's that old thing that, you get in and pull the ladder up behind yourself. It's sort of like that. And I feel exactly the same way whenever I'm following American politics and I see the people in horrible right-wing bastards and you see the Irish surname. You know what I mean? They're a great example. Fox News, Bill O'Reilly. Bill O'Reilly. A demagogic ghoul. And it always makes me sad. Always makes me sad to see it. And I feel the same about this. And because you just think you'd have more compassion. Now, this lady, Nana Akua, I hope I've pronounced her surname correctly. She, of her wiki page up here, says she's a child of Ghana, immigrants, born in Newcastle upon Tyne, and studied business and finance at university. She worked for, she was actually working for the government. She worked for the Department of Health and Social Care to encourage black, Asian and minority ethnic BAME people to be vaccinated against COVID, and called GB News co-host Darren McCaffrey a hypocrite live on air for opposing compulsory vaccinations against COVID for staff in care homes, despite him taking the vaccine against yellow fever. I don't know what that has got on. I'm just reading stuff off her wiki page here. She has criticised, this is it, so she's criticised taking the knee against racism, and she's called it virtue signalling. She's linked it to Black Lives Matter, which she says as a far-left Marxist pressure group and political organisation. Now, I'm sure you've heard that about the BLM thing, and this is the point. It's called the Overton window. You've heard of that, right? And the Overton window it's the idea that you can explain the political landscape in your country by looking through this Overton window. So you can look at it and go, who's on the left, who's on the right, who's in the middle, and it shifts, it'll move over decades, it'll move. Now, over the 40, 50 years of my life, the Overton window in the UK and most certainly the US has shifted to the right. And you know that because the left wing barely doesn't exist. In America, the left wing doesn't exist. The Democratic Party in America would be your Tory party here, maybe even further to the right than them. So the Republican Party in America is, you know where they are. They're out there, right? In the UK, Labour had a brief left-wing surge there under Jeremy Corbyn, but beyond that has shifted gradually. They call it shifting gradually to the centre to try and get the centre ground. But what that does is gives cover for the right wing to move to the right, because the window does. So if the left is here and the right is here, I'm using my hands to describe this to people listening, right? Here and here, and the left shift to the centre, the right don't stay where they are, they move further right. So the whole political landscape of your country moves to the right, and then what happens is the left become abandoned, which is what they are, which is what we are, by the mainstream parties. And by the use of phrases like describing BLM as a far left Marxist pressure group and political organisation, that's what you do. Because you get people that don't know fucking anything about Marxism, literally don't know anything about Marxism, and they will call everything I've heard them call NHS Marxism, cultural Marxism. Cultural Marxism, by the way, I'm sure you've heard it. Everybody fucking sick of hearing that, and it's a load of shit. Cultural Marxism is a direct lift, and I don't want to talk about Nazis or anything like that, because they do say if you bring up the Nazis you've lost the argument, but it's a direct lift from their propaganda called cultural Bolshevism, when they were warning about Russia, right? So the Soviet Union. So it's called cultural Bolshevism, and then 30 years later, after the end of World War II, well, 20 years later, then cultural Marxism was then coined in the 1950s, I think. But it was the same tactic, and it's being used now to describe everything. And I've had discussions with people in the Woodville, people from around here, people who I know, and they've used the phrase, and I've said, and it's a very simple question. If anyone uses the phrase, you just say, your answer is this: what is Marxism? You tell me, what is Marxism? And you'll just listen to them stumble and stutter and fall, because they do not know. Because anybody that uses it will use it wrongly. Now, obviously you want to make sure that you're going to use it correctly, so do a wee bit of reading. Right? So, that's who that is. This horrible bloody woman, and she will get reinvited on these programs, and she will continue. She got a lot of traffic out of this. I never heard of her before now. I'm sure a lot of other people are the same, right? She will continue to do this, and she will continue to be reinvited back, because the producers want the traffic, so they will invite them in. There was another one here on the same show last month. Mike Parry, who's another right-wing presenter,
Day feel about this story in the Times? Jail M25 protesters, Tory MPs demand. Well, I thought there was an announcement a few days ago they were going to be jailed, Yasmin.
I know, this is all mixed messaging, because I think our Prime Minister yesterday made some very curious...
protesters who were climate protesters, who direct action, I'm in favour of direct action, because, it works. Usually, or it can work. So Mike Parry goes on, and they're talking about it on this show. I'm not going to play the whole clip because it's about 5 minutes, and I couldn't listen to Mike Parry for 5 minutes. Don't know how I want to listen to him for fucking 2 hours in the morning.
Farmers took to the roads. None of the traditional right-wing papers objected in the way they're objecting.
Not to the detriment of millions of others. The problem in this country, in all areas, is that minorities always get the upper hand because we're so tolerant, and minorities have to be squashed like that. God. So that the rest...
I think you should go and live in China.
Minorities have to be squashed. Minorities get the upper hand. So all you LGBTQ, trans, whatever people who are a minority, all you, despite the fact that all studies show people of colour have it harder across the board in every demographic. If they're more likely to be on free school meals, less likely to move to benefit from social mobility, etc., etc., etc. That is not to say, by the way, that white people have it easy too, because This is not a black and white issue. This is a working class issue. So you need to park all that stuff. This is about class. We need class solidarity. And my class is the working class. The immigrants coming across on the boats, they're my class. People like this are not my class. These are fucking monsters. That Nana Kua, sorry, I hate getting people's names wrong. I don't mean to be rude. You know who I'm talking about. She's not my class. I don't know what class she comes from. I don't know if she was born wealthy. If she started out working class and has moved into the upper middle class, the managerial class of the upper class, and she's talking like this, then she's a class traitor. And these things do matter. And these things we're talking, you hear, I remember the phrase class war became a thing where people were going, I don't want to say class, it's not or you would be accused. You would have, you're claiming this as a class, and then people would back off from it as though it wasn't. It fucking is. It is a class war. We're in a class war. The upper class are fucking cutting our throats. They're cutting the working class's throats. Look at these Paradise Papers, the Panama Papers, the papers before that, the papers before that. How many times do we have to see? These people have all the fucking money. All of it. All of it. They have more money than they will ever be able to spend. And they're murdering people, destroying countries, and organising coups in order to not pay a tax. Where does the tax go? It pays for the infrastructure. So where does it pays for the social care? We're supposed to be a society. We're supposed to look after each other. We're supposed to give people clear ground as an organised society for people to flourish and thrive. We can argue about to which degree does the state interfere in this or interfere in that. For me, it's basic stuff. Infrastructure should be paid for by the state. Social care should be paid for by the state. Education should be paid for by the state. Defence and security and all that stuff obviously should be paid for by the state. Who pays? What does that mean? What does the state make to be paid for by the tax burden? Well, if the billionaires and millionaires have got all the fucking money and they're not paying tax, who's paying for it? The poor, the working man and woman. So we're in a class war. Whether we agree, whether you want to agree with that or not, we're in a class war. And here we go, I'll play it again. Mike Parry.
Very glad to be living in a free society. Yeah. Then we have to put up with some of this. Yeah, when the farmers went on, when the farmers took to the roads, none of the traditional right-wing papers objected in the way they're objecting.
Not to the detriment of millions of others. The problem in this country, in all areas, is that minorities always get the upper hand because we're so tolerant, and minorities have to be squashed like that. God. So that the rest.
I think you should go and live in China. They could do with you over there.
So that the rest of society can operate normally.
I don't think we want to do too much squashing of minorities on a Friday.
Minorities should be squashed. And what I mean to say is, this is the movement. This is a movement of narrative. This is a change in narrative. See, more and more people say more and more right-wing horrible things about squashing minorities, about immigrants in boats being allowed to drown rather than be rescued. Like, she's actually suggesting that the Coast Guard, who are the people that patrol these waters, should watch people drown rather than rescue them, which is, as the lady pointed out in the clip, a maritime crime. That's illegal. These people don't care about the law. And where does all this lack of care about the law come from? You've watched the Tory government over the past few years, specifically Boris Johnson over this past few years, but the Tory government over whenever, they only obey laws that suit them. Well, English governments, I'll go back. Tony Blair's government, they were bad too. But Boris Johnson is particularly bad. They don't seem to care. They just break agreements as it suits them. They don't give a shit. Right? And for us here in the north, so this fucking half-wit on the screen, Boris Johnson. Right? So there's an article here from The Guardian and I've been saying this now this past wee while, we're going to start seeing and hearing more and more and more of this now. English politicians are going to be talking about Northern Ireland, about the Northern Ireland Protocol, where they haven't been. Now, Enda Kenny warned David Cameron about the potential for this fucking for Brexit being a disaster for the north of Ireland and whatever. Enda Kenny did that way back when. Obviously, he was ignored. We've all, but you, me, everybody, we've all been shouting about this for years. It didn't matter. Now, all of a sudden, there's empty supermarket shelves in England and a fuel crisis. No lorry drivers. They're short something like 100,000 lorry drivers. That's insane. What did they think was going to happen when they took everybody's fucking visa off them? This is the unplanned, ramshackle nature of Brexit. I again keep saying it. If you want a Brexit, by all means, Brexit. But at least plan for it. Make a fucking plan. They didn't. So you end up with the consequences of your actions. But all the way along, Northern Ireland was always obviously... It got a little bit of attention whenever the Tories needed those DUP votes. Remember, to keep the Theresa May government in... or the Boris Johnson government, when you had that minority, a tiny majority in Parliament, and he needed those DUP votes. As soon as he didn't need them, off, that was it. Northern Ireland was never mentioned again. Here it is. Over there, no, not so much. Very rare. It's not a big deal. All of a sudden, we're starting to get these random fucking Tories that none of us have ever fucking heard of talking about the Northern Ireland Protocol in Northern Ireland. Why? Because we're not suffering from the same shortages and the same issues that people are suffering from in England, Scotland and Wales. So that makes Brexit look bad. Can you dig it? So that makes that people will start to go, well, they're not so how come they've got and we haven't? And it's going to be even worse for us because we're Irish. Because these people don't give a fuck about us. Again, like I keep saying, we've got the least of all, and these people want us to have even less than that. And they'll be happy to do it. And half of our fucking politicians seem to be happy to help them. Jeffrey, 40,000 job losses, Donaldson, etc., etc. So, Polly Toynbee, Guardian for the Journalist, an article here. The Tories are sacrificing Northern Irish businesses on the altar of Brexit purity. Now, these things are all connected to this whole rise of English nationalism. These things are connected. And if you think that English nationalism won't cut our fucking throats for any reason, you're a fool. And these people are English nationalists. The Tory party is controlled by the ERG, which is a European research group. A bunch of hard right English Tories. And they do not give a single fuck about Northern Ireland. So here's a bit of the article. Here comes the destroyer as David Frost, the Brexit minister, stomps into the Northern Ireland Protocol this week. This was last week, with European Commission Vice President Maroš Šefčovič. His mission from Boris Johnson is to stir up Brexit trouble and keep stirring. Yes, even at the risk of stirring the darkest shadow of Northern Ireland's history. Let Brexit never be done if it can keep alive the antagonisms that shot Johnson into number 10. Johnson may miscalculate the public's appetite for new Euro strife. Get Brexit done worked with many voters who never wanted to hear the word again, but he may be hoping that the EU trade wars against the despots of Brussels can distract voters from his pile-up crisis. His pile-up of crises, shortage of HGV drivers, port blockages, NHS and social security tipping point, music and arts crippled for lack of EU visas, soaring energy bills, etc., etc., all of which could have been avoided. The EU offered my musician brothers and sisters easy access to visas in order for them to go touring. The Tories turned them down. They said, no, we don't want it. So So what do? There's a criticism. That's a criticism. Why did you turn down visas for musicians? Their own musicians cannot go to Europe to tour. Well, they can go through the whole visa process, which is a pain in the fucking hole for them, right? But the Tories said, no, we don't want it. Why? Because they didn't want musicians and artists going across to France and Germany and coming back and them's been seen to be able to have easy travel. While you and I, well, not me, but anybody in England, doesn't. They don't want that. So if they do that to their own, what do you think they do to us? We're just wee paddies. Never forget that. I know you know that. So ignore any pretense that this bellicose posturing is done to help Northern Ireland or its businesses. Fuck business, Johnson said. And remember that. And he has done just that with the hardest of Brexits. Northern Ireland's businesses suspect he is even less concerned for them. And they would be fucking right, by the way. Very right. Stephen Kelly, Chief Executive of Manufacturing Northern Ireland, which represents 5,500 Northern Irish firms, tells me not one of his members has raised the obscure question of the government's attempt to remove the European Court of Justice as arbiter of trade disputes. Remember last week? We talked about this last week. You have to have a court to arbitrate trade disputes. This pen is manufactured to this standard. We say it's not. Okay, well, we bring it to the court and they will look at the evidence and decide, right? Everyone knows that a treaty needs legal backup. There have been border problems with the rest of the UK, he says, but the ECJ is nothing but a Brexit purity issue. The same, off article, the same purity issue that won't allow them to they won't allow the Europeans to allow artists to travel on an artist's visa because of Brexit purity. You understand? And all the while we've been ignored. They got on in England, in the mains, in Britain, we've been ignored. We've been screaming from the rafters, ignored for years. Now all of a sudden, in the name of Brexit purity, Northern Ireland is now fucking is a big fucking deal. And random fucking Tories who probably have never been here, certainly don't give a shit about the place, all of a sudden they care about our unionist brothers and sisters, who are, by the way, as far as this issue goes, fucking wrong and must be fucking must be denied what they want. The Northern Irish businesses have good reason to be alarmed, as the protocol gives them, many of them, extraordinary opportunity. Staying in a single market from which the rest of the UK is excluded, Scotland would give its right arm for a deal like ours, Kelly says. Sales of goods to the Irish Republic have risen by 61% in 8 months, as Irish buyers switch from harder to access English goods. Manufacturers have brimming order books, he says. New print technologies of Derry sells packaging and labels across both sides of the Irish border, but little to England until now. Its managing director, Gavin Killeen, says he's suddenly been inundated with orders from English companies whose suppliers from the EU have cancelled contracts due to delays in paperwork at channel ports. New print can access materials easily from the EU across the Irish border and send to finished labels to English companies. Leaving here at 4 p.m. and arriving at 10 a.m. the next day, Killeen sales have shot up by 15% in 6 weeks. This is exactly what I've been saying for fucking years. Northern Ireland can do both. We are uniquely positioned. We can be the fulcrum between the EU and Europe and the UK and the United States and the UK and the United States and Europe. Northern Ireland can do that. Ireland can do that. The north of Ireland, whatever the fuck. I'm not going to get in. I'm not arguing about semantics. Whatever you want. It's all upside here. All upside. The sunny uplands that the Tories spoke about, they're ours to grab. They're ours to grab. We can have that. And for the first time, this part of the world would be on the pig's back. We would be looking upwards. Our children's futures would be brighter. Our children's opportunities would be brighter. And by the way, we would also be able to fucking generate our own income. we wouldn't be reliant on English taxpayers to fund this squalid little project. But unionism won't have it. They don't want the Northern Ireland Protocol at any cost. At any benefit, they don't want it. So what's going to happen? Things like this. This article goes on. It just lists again Asda, Boots, fishing in Newry, Deli Lights, sandwich supplier. No, it's just a small company, small business, and all the rest of it. Just so on and so forth. Just examples. Now, I'm sure you can find an example of the opposite, but you'll struggle. As the head of manufacturing Northern Ireland says, 5,500 Northern Irish firms. Not one of his members has raised the obscure question of the government's attempt to remove the European. This is just Brexit purity bullshit. That's literally all this is. And then I'm just going to... So, now, don't forget, this is about... where are we? I don't have it. I don't have a picture of him. But this is about the rise of English nationalism. That's what Brexit is. Because of who drove it. So what has that got to do with Northern Ireland and the DUP? Well, fuck all. But they've injected themselves into the debate in order to remain more British than the British, Britisher than the British. You know what I mean? So this article here, I'll just throw up the window capture so you can hopefully see it. This is East Anglia Times, it's called. Dominic Raab, an end to human rights. Dominic Raab, recently installed as the Justice Secretary and Lord Chancellor, has said he will end the nonsense of the Human Rights Act, claiming it has allowed criminals to evade justice. The nonsense of the Human Rights Act. Imagine being against the Human Rights Act. So, the Human Rights Act came into force in October 2000 as part of the reforms by the Brian Blair government, and it aimed to ensure that the rights in the European Convention on Human Rights are incorporated into British law. These include the right to life, freedom from torture and inhumane or degrading treatment, the right to fair trial and the right to free elections. The whole thing is enforced by the European Court of Human Rights, to which appeal can be made if you believe your human rights have been contravened. This is about Brexit purity. That's all this is. They are ready to remove people's access to fair arbitration when it comes to human rights in order to have Brexit purity with this psychotic version of Brexit that they have in their heads. They won't allow their musicians to have access to artist visas that the European Union has offered. And they will certainly set fire to North. They don't give a fuck about us. So, I'm not going to read the whole article. Just going to give you. So, the convention was drafted because of a problem prosecuting lawyers and trials of Nazi war criminals had. The defendants claimed that their part of the atrocities of the war and the Holocaust were not actually the law at the time as drafted by the Nazi regime. So therefore they weren't guilty. They weren't breaking the law. So I was only following orders, right? So that was the reason for the drafting of the Human Rights Act. So Dominic Raab says, now this is fucking, imagine saying this out loud. I don't believe in economic and social rights. The government would like to amend or replace it, Raab himself said in 2009. I don't support Human Rights Act and I don't believe in economic or social rights. These are the people that are running the country, that are ruling us. These are our ruling class. That seems chilling, although it is not as if we have not been warned. The government wants to replace one of the protections we have against Nazi and Eastern European tyranny with what? Question mark, no answer. Meanwhile, Priti Patel, the Home Secretary, said she would push ahead with plans that would criminalise certain protests that were previously legal, a move that would probably be in contravention to the convention. to the Human Rights Convention, as it would be enforced by the court in Strasbourg, except that this would no longer have jurisdiction. Now would be a good time to start to worry. So what he's saying there is that Priti Patel is moving to have certain protests made illegal, but she needs this Human Rights Act gone, because under the European Court of Human Rights, they're legal. So can you see these dots all fucking lining up for you? Can you see them all getting connected? And if you think that these people give a shit about us, I'm sorry, I'll have a bit of what you're on, because I think you couldn't be any wronger. Right? And this is the point. This is all about a shift, right? This is all about a shift, right? The Overton window was moving. Jeremy Corbyn, who the left put all their faith in, wrongly, not that he was wrong, wrongly putting all your faith in him, meant then that whenever they took him off at the fucking knees, at the head, the left in England had nowhere to go. Only to rebuild. And that's not good enough. So, little article here I'm going to show you. This is the brave new world that we're moving into. This isn't particularly connected to what we're doing or what I'm talking about, but I will say this. Hey Alan from Portrush, how you? Sorry, didn't see the thing there. Hope you're well, man. Do you know what this is on the screen for the people listening to this on the podcast? There's a picture of what you would look at and you would say, well, is it some sort of a robot? And if you said that, you would be right. That's exactly what it is. What sort of a robot is it? It's a robot dog gun. Right? Wait till you hear this. Quadrupedal robots are one of the most interesting developments in robotics in certain years. Sorry, do you know what? I'm not going to connect that to this story. I can connect it, but I'm going to leave it because it's just a wee bit out there and it might drag me off. I want to get wrapped up pretty soon. So you get what the points that I'm making. I'm not going to do the robot dog story. The robot gun dog. They put a fucking gun on a robot. Four-legged, so it looks like a dog, and it's horrific. I'm going to do it next week because I've got a lot to get through. Right? So you get where I'm coming from. This drift ever rightwards. And by the way, you know that I'm very, very left wing. I'm what they would call a far left radical socialist or whatever it is. I don't believe that far leftism or far left socialism is radical at all. I think that's where we need to be. Whenever the radical writer Chris Hedges has never been wrong about anything he's ever said in his life. How can he be radical? These fuckers are radical right-wing psychopaths is what they are, and everything is drifting that way. And we in the north of Ireland and in Ireland as a whole, we're going to get fucking shit upon. We're in the wake of their drift rightwards for this Brexit purity in order to do what fucking God knows what with their own country. We're going to be fucked. We're getting fucked. There's no way we're coming out of this, right? We're not coming out of this in any way good. If we don't look after ourselves, if we don't protect ourselves, to look after ourselves, I'm going to say protect ourselves, I don't mean that we get robot gun dogs, I mean protect ourselves politically speaking. For me, the answer is clear and obvious, it's a united Ireland. You may disagree, that's fine, but that's what I think. But anyway, just keep an eye out for it. It's happening, it's live now. So, there we go. So, I could talk about that shit all night because it's so fucking, it's just current as hell. So we're going to move on quickly to the next story, and it's about Patsy Dan. We're going to connect it through royalty, right? I like, I like to connect things. So boom, there's Patsy Dan. No, it's not. It's the Queen of England, right? So Patsy Dan Rogers was the last King of Ireland. I'll talk to you about him in a second. So, just announced today, the royal family, the Queen has pulled out of a visit to Northern Ireland. It's supposed to be here tomorrow, and to do the centenary service. Remember Michael Higgins, the President of Ireland, refused to attend, and it created quite a bit of an uproar with our unionist brothers and sisters, who seem to be permanently in a state of uproar, which is fine. That's okay. It's up to them. It's their choice. So she's not going to come to Northern Ireland anymore for this service. Now, it is said because she's unwell. Don't think it's anything serious. So Buckingham Palace is not planning to, but this is the problem. This is what I would say is the issue. They're not sending any royals. Instead, Boris Johnson is coming. Remember, Michael Higgins says he wasn't going to attend because it was a political event. And the counter argument was it's not a political event because the Queen is apolitical. If you believe that. Again, I'll have a bit of what you're on. No head of state is apolitical, truly apolitical. But either way, let's give it the benefit of the doubt. So instead of sending another royal, they're sending no one, and they're sending Boris Johnson. Now you cannot say that's not a political move. Of course it fucking is. So it was announced that the 95-year-old monarch would not make a 2-day visit, as she reluctantly accepted medical advice to rest for the next few days. Now, the planned event has been fraught with political difficulty after Irish President Michael D. Higgins last month declined an invitation from the Church Leaders Group. Okay? Mr. Higgins believed that the title was politicised and he would not be appropriate for him to attend. And by the way, 80% of the people in the Republic of Ireland agree with him. So, so apparently the Queen is fine. She's not going to be. She's in fine health. She's an old woman at the end of the day. Maybe the best looked after old woman on the planet, but nonetheless, she's still an old woman. So there's that. So we're not going to linger on it. So here's an article from the Waterford Whispers News, and the DUP demands to see the Queen's doctor's certificate. The DUP have confirmed that while the Queen's reasoning for not attending a Northern Ireland centenary event on medical grounds is understandable, unionists will need to see a copy of her sick certificate, Waterford Whispers News has learned. She better have a proper ailment and not just some old person thing like like exhausted bones or crown-wearing fatigue. There's no excuse for missing our big birthday bash, said the DUP spokesman, as they realised this meant the Queen wouldn't be given the many presents either. The event, organised by the 4 main churches in Northern Ireland, has already been beset with problems after President Michael D. Higgins declined an invite, meaning Ireland's representatives at the event now include Jack Chambers. This is like booking the Beatles and fucking Jedward turning up a sour DUP spokesman added. The Queen's note from her doctor, which had suspiciously clear and legible handwriting, will be sent to an independent third party for verification. Perhaps the doctor we recommend for all your gay conversion therapy needs knows the Queen's doctor. He can certify the cert, added the DUP man. Hang on a wee minute, it says here. The Queen will still be able to attend COP26 in Glasgow. So she can't attend an event marking the existence of Northern Ireland, but she can go to an event about climate change. Something that doesn't even exist. This is an outrage, said the DUP spokesman. The last minute cancellation has proven even more painful, as in the last few minutes the Queen uploaded a selfie to her Instagram along with some friends with the caption, "Headed out tonight with me huns." Going on a proper mad one. Don't tell the Nordies though. Already called in sick for work tomorrow. So there you go. Obviously that's a parody website. But, might be true. So, here's the bit I've been looking forward to the most. I'm going to have to blast through it because I have to go to the pub. Who's that in the screen? That is Patsy Dan Rogers. Fine looking man he is too, sitting there on a pier wall with his accordion. So let me read this to you. The last King of Ireland. Isn't this brilliant? See the way I connected the royalty stories there? Jeez, I'm getting good at this. In Ireland, royalty is elected and legends live on through this strange tiny island off the coast of County Donegal. Ireland's tiny Tory island isn't home to much. 150 inhabitants, one road, one church, one grocery store, which doubles as a post office, one lighthouse, one hotel, one hostel, one social club. And despite the 1800 Acts of Union that unifies the Kingdom of Ireland and Great Britain, one king. His name is Patsy Dan Rogers. When this article was written, he was 71 years old. He died since. He's 71 years old and has lived on the 5 kilometre long County Donegal Island since he was 4. He became the king in 1983. Though not as you might expect, by inheritance, as you would expect if you're... This is a BBC article. So all royalty and kings and chiefs and all this sort of stuff, it wasn't hereditary, it was all elected. The people, the clans chose their leader, right? Which is amazing, and that's very common with native and indigenous peoples throughout the world. Same as with the Native American people. The leader was chosen. Think about it. I mean, it makes no sense to have hereditary leaders. It's fucking stupid. So, his name's right. It's a tradition that, according to Rogers, dates back to the 6th century when Saint Columkill in Irish disembarked on Tory in order to spread Christianity. He came to the island and it was all pagans, said Rogers. The islanders agreed to meet him. Saint Columkill had a conversation with a man called Dugan. Dugan, Rogers continued, expressed to the saint his fears about the pirates who were descending onto the island and destroying its houses. Saint Columba gave Dugan the honour of being the king of Tory, adding that the island would survive the peril if Dugan challenged the pirates. When St. Columba's prediction turned out to be real, the pagans converted to Christianity and erected a monastery in the saint's memory. Destroyed in 1595, the monastery's surviving bell tower remains one of Tory symbols today. Columba also gave Dugan a present, a pot of clay with magical properties. It kept away rats and protected fishermen at sea. The holy clay, which has left the island without rats since then, is still believed to be magic and can be handled exclusively by the oldest member of the Dugan clan. From that day to this, the islanders are very serious about the tradition of the king, Rogers said. And this is true, by the way. You can still go to the island and you can go to the Dugan's house and ask them for some clay, and they'll give you some clay. You put that, I got told about this last week in my Irish class. You put the clay in your own house and you won't get rats or mice in your house. So, today, the king undertakes duties such as ambassadorial obligations on the mainland and abroad, welcoming visitors when they arrive at the harbour, saying goodbye to them when they leave, entertaining tourists by night, playing the accordion or telling them stories about his homeland. As well as king, Rogers is also a painter. Now, this is how I got to know about Patsy Dan Rogers. I became aware of him years ago. Together with Tory's other artists, he keeps alive the island's 50-year-old tradition of primitive painting. I have something to say about that, but I'll finish the article. Which was started by English painter Derek Hill when he first visited Tory in 1956. Rogers' main subject is the island itself, sun-kissed in the summer and flagellated by violent Atlantic storms in the winter. It isn't just the king's paintings that are influenced by Tory. His temper also seems to have been sharpened by the same extreme sceneries as his artwork. Like the sea roughened by a hurricane, Rogers can be indomitable, particularly when speaking about the island's future or how people look to him as a leader. But when the blizzard calms down, he speaks gently again. People think I am higher up than I am, Rogers said, that I have powers to do things for the island, and if something goes wrong, I should be able to fix it. I try to do my best, but I don't feel like I should really be looked at like that. Although the kingship is the most famous of Tories traditions, the island's legends date back even further than the 6th century. They strongly tie in with some of Ireland's most important mythology. King Balor, a one-eyed giant and lord and supernatural race, the Fomorians, is said to have lived in Dunbalor, Balor's fort, a promontory stronghold on the Tories' east coast that dates from the Iron Age. In the tower, Tormore, the island's highest point, Balor allegedly kept his daughters, Ethna, in prison, fearing the prophecy that said he would be killed by his grandson, the warrior of the light, Lugh, which is where County Louth gets its name from, by the way. Louth in our LU, isn't it? Lugh, and that's where that comes from. So the fort naturally defended on 3 sides. Alright, that's just a bit of blah blah blah. So, right, that's all about thing. So Patsy Dan, right? So Patsy Dan became a painter, along with lots of others. It's called primitive painting, and that's one of them there by a guy called Dixon, right? Let me just... James Dixon. Now, Hill came across in the 60s and taught these guys how to paint, and they call it primitive painting. But then they started to get into, and it's a really weird thing. So you can see that on the screen. I'll describe it to you. It's like a row of houses in a bay, but it curves around, and it's all, there's no, what is lacking in the painting is something that we take for granted, because we've been taught it. And this is what fascinates me about these painters. We've been taught what is missing from that painting, that we've been taught that the painter obviously hadn't been yet. Perspective. Remember the Father Ted sketch? Close up, far away. Right? If you haven't been taught perspective, you don't paint perspective. And there's no perspective in the painting. And all of their paintings were like that. Just put it into Google, Tory Island painters, and you'll see it. Hundreds of these, but you'll also see it changing over time. If you got a timeline of it, you'll see that by the time they get into the 70s and 80s, perspective is there. And I think that they're far better without the perspective. I think their paintings got worse. Right? And they're called primitive paintings. Primitive painters, as you heard from the article, James Hill taught primitive painters, because they hadn't, we use the word primitive when we mean unrefined or it's simple in a lot of ways. I don't like that. I don't like that as a word. I don't like to call it that. I get it. I'm not being naive or I'm not being all fucking offended and shit. But I prefer. There's got to be a better way, because whenever you look at painters like artists like Picasso was always trying to detune his talent. That's wrong. Not detune his talent. Detune his paintings, make it more simple. You see all the African and native art in his paintings. Now this is a man that could paint anything, make it look like a photograph. And he went, no, back. And he always said, I wish I could paint as well. I wish I could draw as well as a 7-year-old child. And you would look at these paintings and think, maybe a child has painted that. It's a wee bit more to it than that, but nonetheless, and that's what you're getting at. So to call it primitive painting, I don't think that's good. I don't like that, because it sort of gives it implies that there's no value in it. It's less valuable, and I don't believe that it is. I believe they're beautiful. I do a bit of painting myself, and these guys are the inspiration for me. I try to flatten everything, and I try to do blocks of thing and not have all that, and it's hard to do. See, once you know that you should put that back under, you try and do that, it's very difficult. It's like when you're a musician and you're the type of blues that I play and listen to, I try to play with the band, comes from the North Mississippi tradition, which is quite often just one note or one riff, certainly one chord, but a riff repeated. So I try not to, with a lot of our stuff, I try to keep it really simple. And see, once you've been taught, you do 3 or 4 chords and then you do a chorus and that's different in the middle 8 and intro and outro and that. See, once you've been taught all that, you've then got to go back and unlearn it. And that's really hard to do, So, doggone. Yeah. So, this guy, these guys all exhibited all over Europe. So you must go and check them out. If you feel compelled to, you should do. So this painting that's on the screen, this is by James Dixon. So James Dixon was born in Tory Island, spent most of his life working there as a crofter and a fisherman. He only began painting in his late 60s, when encouraged to do so by an English artist visiting the island Derrick Hill. Dixon worked in an untutored style, depicting scenes of rural labour and unusual local events, with a loose, feathery brushstroke, a visceral range of colours. His paintings attracted considerable acclaim in the 60s, and he exhibited in Belfast, Dublin, London and Vienna. James Dixon's often painted works representing local activities, stories and places associated with the sea, etc., etc. And you can see that painting, that's a fair description of what that is, stylistically. So there you go. So check out the Tory Island painters. Check out Patsy Dan Rogers. And I remember a few years ago, I kind of became a wee bit obsessed by these guys. And I went online to see what their paintings sell for. It used to be, my Irish teacher, a guy called Ewan McGee here in town, and he remembers going across, when he's been going across the Tory Island, he's goes to Donegal all the time, going across the Tory Island regularly, and he would see, and you could buy these paintings for very little. And so I sort of Googled it, prices of these paintings, where did they go to auction and all the rest of it, and they still to this day don't go for enough. Well, they go for hundreds, they don't go for thousands. So I was sort of thinking about maybe trying to buy a couple. Never got round to it, but I will, because I do like them very much. So there we go. All done, all done, all done. Where's the theme? There we go. Bum, 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 bum. I'm going to leave that painting up because it's rather beautiful and I don't want to look at any more fucking Tories. So listen, thanks to the guys for joining me on the live stream. It's half a dozen, 6 or 7 at one point, which is a lot for the live stream. I mean, the video gets a lot more views over the course of the week. But I'll just type a wee message. Hey, look at me trying to type. I hate this keyboard. It must be a new one. There we go. So, there we go. That's us. We're all done. I'm going to call it. I'm going to go round to the Woodville for a pint. If you want to join me, you know where I'll be. So So let me just take care of this. Bump, bump, bump. Gonna move that picture into the middle because it's really, really nice. So there we go. We're all done. Thanks a million. I appreciate it. Politics, culture, and some other shit. Like, share, subscribe. Tell your friends. And if you have any complaints, keep them to yourself. Good night.